Hey, this is Josh here,
Hey,
and
I'm
Mike,
Mike.
and this is Real Dead. And today we have a special guest here, Cody Leach. He doesn't need any, I don't think he needs introduction. I mean, if you're here, you know who he is. I'll guarantee that. Um, but yeah, we're gonna do a kind of a fun interview today. I think questions about horror and things like that. And hopefully we get into some good discussions here. I think we will. And yeah, Mike, do you want to start with? Do you want to say anything, Cody, before we
Yeah,
get started?
yeah,
Hello.
Cody. Yeah, we're
Just
gonna
gets
try
right
to
to it. I
talk.
like that.
Yeah, we're gonna talk less and let Cody talk more. By the way,
Yeah,
during this interview, because Josh has a tendency to talk quite a bit, and and Cody, just ahead of time, if we say anything about the North and the South, it's all in good fun.
Oh,
Josh
it's
is
fine.
from,
I'm a neutral party. I was born
yeah.
up north, lived there for 14 years, and then I've resided in the South for the last 20. So I don't stake my flag in either one of them really.
yeah. I live in Michigan. Mike lives in North Carolina. So
Okay,
Yeah,
I
so
went from Ohio to Georgia, so just a little close.
yeah,
yeah. So yeah, we just appreciate Cody coming in and
yes,
enjoy his very honest feedback. That's one thing I can say about Cody's channel is I started deep diving into reviews and stuff in the last couple of years when we started this channel, and I really appreciate your
yeah.
honest feedback and it's unfiltered sometimes, and I like that. Instead of just blowing a lot of smoke, you give us your honest feedback, and I really enjoy that part of your channel.
I appreciate it, and it always shocks me how many people say that about my channel. It says more about how many people don't give that vibe, I think, than anything. And that's a shame to me. I don't understand the point of doing this if you're not going to give your honest feedback.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think. I mean, I think aren't a lot of people like when they get like to have a bigger channel and different things, they get worried about like, well, is this person not gonna like? Am I not gonna have this connection if I give this review? And I know that you had I mean, a squash now, but disagreement with the people behind the Blood and Honey
Hmm.
movie originally, but and yeah, if you're not gonna give your honest opinion and they can't understand that, then why are you doing this? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
All right, so you want to start out with the first questions there, Josh?
Yeah, yeah. So I was just gonna go with do you attend or set up at conventions? What's like some of your favorite like famous autographs that you have, and what's like a wish list of like ones that you want to get autographs or meet the celebrities?
Hmm.
Like a favorite item that you have signed, things like that.
I just kind of started dipping into conventions. So a buddy of mine, Sean Chandler, really kind of pounded the pavement to try to get in with the people that run MegaCon and a few others. Fan Expo, I think, is the name of the company. And so he invited me a couple of years ago to join him, which was terrifying for me because I for the longest time I was like afraid of public speaking, even though I guess technically this is a version of it, but I don't have to look at anybody when I do it. So that was a little nerve wracking for me, and then I really enjoyed it and got through it really easily. So then we've done it twice since. And just this year, I actually did my first horror convention, which was Mad Monster back in like March, February, sometime in that range. So as of now, I've only attended 4 conventions, 3 of which were MegaCon that I was technically working in. But they're a lot of fun, and so I've had my eye on doing a lot more. It's a shame that like right now in the summertime, there's 3 different cons going on the exact same weekend, which all 3 of them have chunks of people that I really want to see. And I'm just like, damn, like I'm going to Gathering of the Ghouls. So I'm friends with the guys that run the Terror Trader channel, and they have a store, and they're flying me out, and we're going to do some cool stuff out in Arizona. And it's the same weekend as Mad Monster in North Carolina coming back and Spooky Empire. And there's a lot of really cool people at Gathering the Ghouls I can't wait to hang out with. You got Felissa Rose, who I got to meet. You got Michael Berryman, a number of people from Return of the Living Dead, and so it's going to be a lot of fun. But then I keep seeing posts from like Mad Monster and Spooky Empire people, and I'm like, son of a bitch! Like the whole strike team from Shield is going to be there for the first time, and I'm just like, damn, why can't you just be a week later? And I just hit all of them. So I've got the hunger for it now and going to try to go to a lot more. As far as favorite autographs, I just grabbed a couple that fit the horror theme. I got quite a few that don't have anything to do with horror, but one of my favorites, probably tied with Henry Winkler for like the most cherished memory of meeting somebody in person, is Felissa Rose. So I met her at Mad Monster this year, and you know, they always say don't meet your heroes, and luckily I have not had that experience yet. The worst experience that I've had is just somebody that just seems like maybe they're not as into the con and they're kind of there just signing things, smiling at everybody, but maybe aren't as into it as others. That's my worst experience. But Felissa Rose made me feel like she was as excited to meet me as I was excited to meet her. And that's something I wish more people that did cons would do, because I mean, this is for some people, the only chance you're getting to meet somebody that you look up to their work. And it's always disappointing when you hear bad stories, or even if you get there and you feel like they're not that into it, there's a bit of disappointment in that, even though you try to understand you're the 10,000th person they've talked to over the weekend. But she legitimately made me feel like the line of people behind me didn't matter. And it's just me and her for 5 to 10 minutes. And we were talking about me introducing my little brother and my wife to Sleepaway Camp, and talked about YouTube a little bit and stuff. And so she was wonderful. Can't wait to hang out with her, like behind the scenes at Gathering of the Ghouls. At MegaCon this year, I got a chance to meet Eli Roth, and he was pretty cool.
Yeah, cool.
I told him something I wanted to tell him. I said, "You're responsible for traumatizing me twice." And he was like, huh? And so I told him about the story when I first saw Hostel, which legitimately kind of fucked me up. I was like, I just watched people get murdered. That was real. And then he was actually the person, oddly enough, that made me watch Sleepaway Camp for the first time, because he did an interview and talked about how shocking the ending was. And I was like, I got to see what this movie is. So I told him that story, and didn't get to talk to him too long because he had a line of people, and I try to respect people's time. But we talked a little bit about some other 80s horror films, and he was pretty cool. And then the one that I had to work the hardest to get at MegaCon, because I stood in this guy's line, and I had 5 panels over that weekend. So I only had chunks of time that I could go stand in line. Wow. I stood in this guy's line for 3 hours.
Whoa.
And when I was about 10 people away from his table, he had to get up and go do a photo op. And so I had to leave and go get in my panel after standing there for 3 hours. And luckily, I caught him. They had moved his table somewhere else in MegaCon, and on the last day that I was there, he was seated right next to the Back to the Future people that were left over. And so all you see is these wall of people, and I was like, "There's no way!" Like he's got this massive line. It's crazy. And then I just happened to walk another couple of feet, and all of the people in line were for Back to the Future, and he had 2 people in line. I was like, "Huh!" And so I jumped up real quick, and it was Keith David.
Oh, nice.
From The Thing. And what shocked me is because I think of Keith David from The Thing, from They Live.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, things like There's Something About Mary, but like my con brain is like, oh, everybody in this line is a Thing fan. And when I was standing in line for that 3 hours, I'm seeing Halo figurines, I'm seeing Princess and the Frog and gargoyles. And I was like, oh yeah, he's done a lot more nerdy shit than The Thing.
Yeah.
So no wonder he has a massive line, but he was really cool too. I mean, for me being probably in the last dozen people that he saw that entire weekend, I made him laugh, talking about how I always strap people into a chair and make them watch The Thing if I find out they haven't seen it yet.
It's incredible.
I got so starstruck. I paid for the combo where you get the autograph and the selfie, and I was so starstruck and just glad to see him that I walked away and got like 100 feet away, and I was like, shit, I forgot the picture. And so I went back. I went back and told him, like, I'm so sorry, I forgot I got the combo. He's like, yeah, get back here. And so we took a picture too. But he was a lot of fun too. He's a guy that kind of gives this intimidating vibe because his characters are always so like harsh, but he seemed like the nicest dude. So that's always funny to see too. You see like the behind the mask a bit.
That's awesome.
So those are 3 that I wanted to show.
Yeah.
I love your I've listened to a couple of your interviews and stuff, and you've talked about, I'm in the same boat with you with Sleepaway Camp. And in my rec room down here, I have a poster of Sleepaway Camp because I remember on VHS back in the 80s watching Sleepaway Camp when you went into the video store and picked up 4 or 5 movies for the weekend.
Yeah.
And I watched Sleepaway Camp without knowing the ending of it.
I did too.
And was blown away because, you know, I'm 53 years old, so I was a teenager. And when I heard your story and telling that story, I was like, I was in the same boat as him. And then you went back to high school and you're like, dang, you got to see this movie. This is what happened. Nobody ever told me that. But Felicia Rose, I'm very jealous of that because I've told Josh on the con things. I'm like, I got to go to a con that she's at because it's just high on my list. And all the movies she plays in, and even some of the B movies that she plays like a little scene in, you know, and Hatchet and some of the, you know, The Gator and some of these other movies that I've heard nothing but great things about her. So she's very high on my list to meet.
Yeah, her and Henry Winkler. Like, I've met a lot of other people that are very nice too, but those two are the ones that stick out in my mind of people that just seemed like I was the only person
he was at
in
a
the
book
convention.
signing here, and I missed it, and I hated I missed it. But he had a book that came out, I think last year, year before last, and he was at a Barnes and Nobles here, and that had a book signing. And I missed it, and I hated that because
my favorite thing. Yeah, my favorite thing about meeting him, I mean, he was wonderful the whole way through. He had a line of people, and he was shaking people's hands. Like, we'll get to you in a minute. Thank you for coming. And but it was right before season 4 of Barry started to premiere, and I was a massive Barry fan. And so, like, I've talked to him about a bunch of other things. I got something signed from my dad. I always try to get him something, at least at every con I go to, because he never goes to them. I told him, I said, yeah, you know, I can't wait to see season 4 of Barry. And he did the cutest fucking thing where, I mean, we're in MegaCon. There's 15,000 people around us. And I said, you know, I can't wait to see Barry. And he goes, you know what? They let me see a screener of it, and it's awesome. And it was just so cool the way that he like was telling me something on the sneak.
He's like looking around.
Yeah,
oh, that's awesome.
Was Keith David was he like one of the only celebrities you kind of got starstruck with?
I get a little bit starstruck with all of them. My issue that I have is that I get anxious about not just saying the same thing that they've heard 10,000 times. And that's always the difficulty for me, because selfishly, I want to just tell them, like, I love this. I love this. It's so important to me. Thank you so much. And I know they've heard a variation of that all week long. So I always try to think, like, what's something that I could say that they haven't heard? And I'm not always successful with it. You know, sometimes, like, I tried to throw off Katie Seagal. I met her at MegaCon, and, you know, everybody's there getting either Married with Children or Mostly Sons of Anarchy shit.
Right.
I was like, she better have a Smart House picture up there. And so, you know, the 90s kid in me, the Disney Channel stuff, I was looking. And so I tried to throw her off a bit, where I got her to sign a Gemma picture. And I was like, but you're royalty in my house as Pat from Smart House. And she kind of giggled a little bit. But yeah, I get starstruck by all of them. But that's where I get a little anxiety, where I'm just like, how am I going to stand out? I want to stand out a little bit. Yeah. And the only time that I felt like I really succeeded with it was the second time that I went to MegaCon, and we had a little break, and, you know, Sean still had 17,000 people at his table wanting to meet him. Everybody was done giving a fuck about me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to skirt away real quick. And so I went and got in line for Carl Weathers, who, you know, tragically RIP.
Yeah.
But
I met him too.
Yeah, I met him at the last MegaCon that he did, and I was at MegaCon the following year in Keith David's line when the news dropped that he passed away.
Wow.
Like, yeah, it was kind of surreal. But anyway, I got to meet him, and it was obvious. I was like, everybody in this line is either going to ask him about Rocky or Predator. That's it. And so I started to look at his IMDb and stuff. I was like, what else has he been in that I might have forgotten about? And speaking of The Shield, he was in The Shield for a couple episodes. I was like, that's it. Nobody's going to fucking ask about that. So I got up to him, and, you know, I did my usual, like, hey, you know, me and my dad, my kids love these movies. Thank you for doing that. Oh yeah, cool, man, I appreciate it. And I said, what do I got to do to get you and Chickless back together for like a Shield reboot? And Chickless. And then he went on for like 5 minutes talking about that. And I was just looking at everybody in the line like, yeah, I got him to talk, bitch. so that was the one time I felt I was really good at standing out. And yeah, I'd love to be able to tell Michael Chiklis that story too. Be like, the only time I got to meet Carl Weathers, he was going on and on about you.
Yeah, my interaction with Carl Weathers was about, I don't know, 15 seconds. So yeah, you did a lot better than me. He was nice. You know, I was starstruck with Nev when I met Nev, because I'm a huge Scream fan, and I didn't know what to say, dude. I was just, I mean, I totally blew it. I said, I like your movies.
So I got a picture taken with the Scream cast on that the second MegaCon that I went to, and it was me, and we got a whole bunch of other YouTubers to join us for that one. Kind of made a big thing out of it. So I paid for 5 of us to get a picture with Nev Campbell, Matthew Lillard, Jamie Kennedy, Skeet Ulrich, and then I paid a little extra to get Henry Winkler in there. So it
Oh,
was like a whole,
cool. That's awesome.
yeah, it was a whole thing. And it was so funny because it was the first time I ever paid for a professional photo op. So I didn't know what to expect. And for those that haven't, don't expect to be able to say shit to these people. It doesn't matter who they are. Like, you're literally like, turn around, snap, leave, get out. Especially for the bigger ones. You know, smaller ones where you're only about 6 people in line, they're a little friendlier, a little bit more lax. But the big ones, like when we saw Back to the Future, go, go, go. So I was like, I paid like $600 for this photo. I'm shooting my fucking shot. So we get in line. We're next. And this woman who's running everything, she goes, okay, look, you, because I was the tallest one. She goes, you're going to be in front. You see that X? You're going to stand there. You're going to face the camera. The lights are going to pop. Then you're going to go this way. Got it? Good. And so next, walk up, turn around, smile, pop. And then I turn around to Jamie Kennedy and I go, you've been X. And he starts laughing and they're like, get out.
Yeah, Jamie Kennedy was definitely very interesting when I met him. He put this like huge light thing on my phone to take the selfies. It was bizarre, but it was fun. I liked meeting the guy. I enjoy him. But
so was Matthew Lillard? I mean, he's like a rock star now. I mean, with the cons that you were at, was his lines as long as anybody else's, Cody? I mean,
I mean, him and Nev's line were certainly the longest, but they were all pretty long. I mean, there was no question I didn't have enough time to actually get physically into their line. But pretty much all the Scream people, you know, this was after Scream 5 and before Scream 6. So a lot of people were really getting back into Scream fever. But yeah, him and Nev tend to always be the ones that I see the most people at if there is a difference.
Right. Yeah, we went to the Mad Monster that had all of them at it. The one in Atlanta last November. Oh yeah. And we're actually going to the Mad Monster Expo coming up, me and Mike are. So
yeah, it's only about an hour from my house, the one in Charlotte, Concord, North Carolina. So it's only an hour drive away. And was hoping to meet Tobin Bell, but he's backed out of that one now. So unfortunately, but there's still some other big ones there.
Yeah. Tell the Shield guys I said hi.
Yeah, we'll tell them that. So another good question here. You know, I know we got some age differences here between me and you and Josh. Is like, what is your favorite decade for you personally of horror? And within that decade, can you kind of give us your top 3 movies of that decade?
It's without a doubt the 80s. I mean, the 80s kind of, whether it's music or movies, is kind of where my heart lies. So the slasher movies of that time, even some of the other ones like the vampire flicks and just the style of the 80s, you know, that's a lot of things got started in the 70s, but the 80s is really where a lot of it was birthed with all the different horror icons and some of the franchises that I still hold on to the most today. So without a doubt, I wouldn't even know what to tell you is in second place because it's such a, you know, 80s up here and everything else is down here. But some favorites, The Thing is my favorite horror film of all time, John Carpenter. The Lost Boys is a movie that, like, to the point where that and The Thing almost like change places depending on what mood I'm in. Of course, got to give Freddy love. So Dream Warriors tends to be my favorite, but that or the original will work. And then another one would be like Pet Sematary that doesn't get mentioned very often.
Yeah, I love Pet Sematary.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about that a while back, Josh. We did a review of that going back, and it didn't do so well on Rotten Tomatoes. But man, I like the original. I thought it's really good.
It holds up.
I mean, I think it holds up. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, like everybody kind of has their own criteria, their own definition for what they consider scary. Some people it's jump scares, some people it's tone, some people it's the subject matter. For me, like the big question that a lot of people get at, like, what's the scariest movie of all time? For me, it's the original Pet Sematary, because that concept, that idea of losing a child, literally my greatest fear, and there's not even a close second. What the grief of that pushing you to play with, play God, play with the dead, and then having to euthanize that child again because of your mistake. I mean, without the rest of the family getting mutilated and the neighbors, that's enough for me to consider it the scariest. And then you throw Zelda and shit in there, like, that's, to me, that's my answer for that question, is because Pet Sematary, like, and it's funny because it's a movie that has evolved for me. as a kid, it was always scary, but it was for the surface level stuff. It was, the creepy music and the kids when the movie opens up, la 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 la, la, like shit like that. And of course, Zelda. Zelda used to always scare the shit out of me.
Scary, gosh.
Oh yeah. But as after I had kids, when you watch the movie, suddenly it's the other stuff. It's the quieter moments that screw with me the most. Like the scene where he digs his kid up and then it just shows a shot of him in the cold, just rocking his kid's corpse. I'm just like, oh, stuff like that. That's the nightmare fuel for me. Like, I'll take Freddy, I'll run from Jason, I'll be stuck in a room with Pinhead all day long before I'll do that shit.
Man.
Good answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Josh, you got one next?
Oh yeah. So who is on your Mount Rushmore of final girls? I think I like when I think about this, it's not as like the first couple are easy, but for me, that fourth one is a little hard for me. I don't know about Mike, but how do you feel about this one, Cody?
It's an easy answer for me, but I always get a little pushback because one of my answers often gets, people often try to tell me that's not a final girl. And to me, it's like, I don't know, go ahead and try and argue that. But anyway, so we'll get the obvious ones out of the way. You got Sidney Prescott, who I think is easily like the most badass slasher final girl. I mean, she's lived through all the movies. She kicks the shit out of Ghostface. The last two movies, she ain't even scared. She's just like, bitch, where you at? Like, which closet are you in? Let's get this over with.
I loved it.
So yeah, I love Sydney. Nancy Thompson, got to throw her out because of my Nightmare fandom. I think that she's awesome. The fact, even in the first movie, she gets to a point where she's like, I ain't taking this dude shit anymore, and just starts to do the traps. And then in Dream Warrior, she's kind of like the savior character that comes in to teach the new generation how to survive him. And then even if you go to New Nightmare, her saving her kid, absolutely love that character. You got Ripley from Alien, one that, I mean, kind of embodies everything you want in a final girl, where it's like you wouldn't think that she would be the survivor in the first film. She's not even really like top billing even, I don't think. And then just kind of rises to the occasion. And the way that character evolves in Aliens and turns into this badass that she's surrounded by military, colonial Marines that are supposed to be the baddest of the bad. And they just get wiped out left and right. And she ends up, I mean, just that scene of get away from her, bitch. Like that in and of itself, just that scene. That's why her face is on the Mount Rushmore for me. Then the one that I get pushback with, which is going to seem redundant after the answer I just gave, is Sarah Connor. I adore the Terminator movies, especially the first two. I am one of those people that argues that the first Terminator is a slasher film. After that, they're not. They're all action-based. But for me, Sarah Connor, I mean, you have, if you're going to operate under the rules of a slasher, where the T-800 is your Jason Voorhees, and he's going through and he's trying to wipe out every Sarah Connor that he can find in the phone book. And she survives by the end of it and then vanquishes the evil. Basically the same evolution you got in Ripley, where you get the T2 and all of a sudden that scared, timid little waitress is the one you need to be scared of, where she's almost like a Terminator herself, where she goes after Miles Dyson and then that last minute that humanity hits her and she can't do it. So as far as character arcs, performance, movies that are high on my list of favorites, Sarah Connor has to be on there for me. So that'd be my 4.
Yeah, I mean, Ripley, I don't think about her, but you're right, she deserves to be on there, no doubt. So yeah, I like Jenny from part 2 of Friday the 13th. I really like her character. But yeah, I agree. I like your list a lot. I think it's pretty good. I think Mike would put Laurie Strode on there because he's a Halloween homer.
I'm in my 50s. I got to go back to the late 70s, early 80s with I got to represent those born in the early 70s. So yeah, I would add her. But before we even went live tonight, we were or this recording, you and I were talking, Josh, about Terminator, because the last time I was at Mad Monster with my son, we were in the RIP room, and they were playing Terminator because they had several of the people from the original Terminator there for autographs. So that was pretty cool there. So I mean, if you think about it, is there really any difference between Arnold Schwarzenegger's character and a Jason or Michael Myers?
Right.
Not really.
That's right.
If he used a knife more, it wouldn't even be an argument. But people get
no,
hung up
I mean
on the
it's
gun.
not. And yeah, I mean there's some pretty good kills in that movie too.
Yeah. First thing he does is push his fist through a dude's chest. It's gory as hell.
Yes, you're 100% right about that. I think, like you said, I think it kind of gets overlooked. You just think of it as a sci-fi action movie, but I mean,
all the sequels kind of paint the entire franchise as an action franchise, and it's like I would never argue that T2 onward is horror. There's still some horror elements, but for me, that first film is very much a slasher movie that has sci-fi and action in it. But the slasher side of it stands out to me more.
Yeah, I agree with that, no doubt.
So, in the world of sequels, all the time, and I've heard some recent interviews with you, and I respect your opinion talking about Terrifier 3 and saying maybe slow down on that one after Terrifier 3. Wait a few years, and I appreciate that because I'm a Terrifier fan. I'm trying to get Josh to watch the first two. But is there a movie that you feel deserves a sequel? A lot of people, a lot of times there's too many sequels made. Is there a movie out there in the horror genre that you're like, man, I really wish they would have done a sequel on that one, that maybe they haven't over time?
So two that come to mind for me kind of fit into that legacy sequel category, which to a degree we're getting a little few too many of those. But before we end this little craze that we're in, one of them I would really like to see. I don't know how. I don't think it would ever be made, to be honest with you. I don't know how people would take it, but to me, there's a really interesting thing you could do with Sleepaway Camp. If you wanted to do like a 40 years later thing where Felissa Rose comes back, I look at it like a Psycho 2 approach. Angela's been locked up since the massacre in the 80s, and she finally gets out, and now she's in this climate of the world where socially the views on transsexual has very much shifted since the 80s. And so if you look at Psycho 2, the whole plot of that movie is you get Norman Bates out of prison 20 years later, and the community will not accept the fact that he's been reformed. And so they're trying anything they can do to get him to show that he's still fucked up and he's still a killer. So if you take that approach to Sleepaway Camp, where you have people that don't want to accept that she's reformed, and in today's social climate, there's a lot of interesting things you could do with that, where they're trying to push Angela back. It's taboo as fuck, as is the same Sleepaway Camp. I don't think anybody would ever greenlight it, but if I want to live in a reality where somebody could make that movie and do something really interesting, you could lean into the silly, but I think there's some really interesting social commentary you could dig out of that. Another one that's not nearly as taboo and is much more likely to happen is that I think that, a lot of people want to remake to this film, and I think you could very easily just do a sequel and kind of get the best of both worlds, and that's Christine, the John Carpenter film, where the aesthetic that's really cool about that movie is that it takes place, it might as well take place in the 80s. I think it takes place in the late 70s, but it's got a whole 80s vibe about it. So it takes place around the 80s, but the whole vibe about Christine and the way that it kind of seeps its evil into Arnie is very much like this 50s greaser kind of attitude. And so I think it would be cool if you had a modern day sequel to that, where somebody comes across the wreckage of Christine. It's taken 40 years or whatever to kind of push itself back out, and now you have a modern 2025 whatever teen that suddenly has this greaser attitude to him, and you could get a lot more into like the soul that's inside of the car that they never really bothered with in the John Carpenter movie. I think that would be cool, as opposed to just doing a remake to it.
I've not heard that. Those would be the whole Sleepaway Camp thing really kind of got my wheels turning when you said that. But
as I say, Mike would be on board. No doubt,
I would definitely be on board with that.
I'm going to ask Felissa about it if we get some time to talk about it. I'm sure she'd be on board for it. But like, what do you think the possibility of this is?
Please do. Josh, you want to go to the next question?
Yeah. So we're more than half. Are we more? I think we're more than halfway through this year, but there's still some anticipated horror movies coming out this year. What are some of your most anticipated horror movies that are yet to come out in 2024?
So the two main ones is Terrifier 3. I was not a big fan of the first Terrifier. I thought it was fine, but I was not a part of the hype train. You know, there was a lot of people that were ready to like hand the crown over, like new horror icon. And I was like, pause. It's been one movie, chill. And then Terrifier 2, I actually walked in very skeptical. I was like, 2.5 hours of that? Like, how? And so I saw it at a film festival in the coolest setting possible, because I saw it with the director, the cast, you know, Art the Clown and Damien Leone are 10 feet in front of me. Chris Stuckman's 20 feet to my right. And so it was a really cool experience, even if I didn't end up liking the movie. But I ended up really liking it. To me, the sequel like fixed pretty much everything I didn't care for in the first one. You know, it's still over the top. It's still not for everybody. But there's a lot more lore to it. The final girl in Sienna's awesome. So Terrifier 3, no matter what idea they were going to go through, was going to have my attention. The fact that it's a Christmas horror film really intrigues me. And, you know, the fact that they're, of course, going to try to top themselves. And if you've seen Terrifier 2, you're like, how do you top the bedroom scene? Like, what is it going to be, like a 45-minute kill scene? So I'm just very, very curious and highly anticipating what the hell this is going to be. And then the other one, which is totally different style of film, would be Nosferatu, which
Really?
I'm kind of I have a love-hate relationship with Robert Eggers films. You know, The Witch is something that I would say I respect more than I enjoy. It was one watch. I'm like, okay, cool. Did not like The Lighthouse whatsoever. That was on my bottom 5 of that year. Not that I saw a ton of films that year, but it was not my thing whatsoever. And then I really loved The Northman. But I'm somebody that for well over a decade now, I'm like, oh, can this Twilight stink just leave and we get vampire and werewolf movies back? And over the last 3 years, vampire movies have been making a comeback. I mean, you had Renfield, you had Abigail earlier this year, which is still my #1 movie of the year. And then you got Nosferatu. And I just think that guy's sensibility and what he does with his period piece and the look of his movies and the cast that they have for it so far, I'll be shocked if it doesn't work for me. As long as it doesn't lean too much into the weird shit he did in The Lighthouse, I think that's going to be an easy like top 10 of the year for me. So either of those two, I'm chomping at the bit for.
Okay. So this kind of goes into something you said. I didn't, it wasn't, it's just kind of up in the air or off the top of my head here. So you said Abigail is your favorite.
I'm going to ask the same question. I know what you're going to say,
That's
Josh.
your favorite horror movie of this year so far?
January through July. What is your top 3?
Let's say, well, as of right now, my top 3, just horror films or in general?
Yeah, just horror films.
Okay, so it would be Abigail, Cuckoo, which I saw at a film festival. It's about to come out here soon, and Maxine.
Okay. Yeah, I think for me, my favorite horror movie this year is Immaculate. I loved what they did with that. For me, that's my favorite. I did love Maxine as well. But yeah, I think for me, it's got to be Immaculate at this point for me. Mike, what is yours, Mike?
Did you see The First Omen?
I did see The First Omen, and I really enjoyed that as well. I actually, at first, I thought The First Omen, I liked that better. But then after, you know, watching some stuff and then just thinking about it and talking about it with Mike on our channel, I put Immaculate above it. Even though I did really enjoy The First Omen and thought it wasn't just a throwaway sequel. That actually was something good to add. Yeah, I thought it was great.
It was eerie how similar those movies were. Jesus Christ, sure. It's the same plot.
Yeah. I thought Sydney Sweeney did an excellent job acting. I think a lot of people think she's like an airhead or something, but
I think she's so smart because she actually leans into that. Yeah. She's so against type where like nowadays that's very much something that women push back on. Yeah, rightfully so. But like, she's one that she knows her demographic. She's like, I'm the dumb blonde with the big tits. Go ahead and assume that of me, and I'm going to surprise the shit out of you. And I love that about her. Even the way that she very smartly kind of navigated through that whole Madam Web situation, where she's like, yeah, I know it sucked. It's whatever. I did that so that I could make my movie, and now you're going to go see that and see something different. And so many times nowadays, like even Emma Roberts did this where she tried to like put it on the audience. Like it's their fault because they listened to all the internet memes. And it's like, bitch, no, that movie was terrible. Don't get the fuck out of here with that. And so I love it was refreshing the fact that she's like, yep, I starred in a big movie that cost $200 million and is a piece of shit so that I could do this thing. So,
yeah.
See you there.
And yeah, my wife, she likes horror movies, but she's not as big a fan as me. But she thought Immaculate was incredible. She really enjoyed that movie. And Mike, what's your favorite one this year so far?
So far for me, believe it or not, I'm going to say Immaculate too. The ending of that is what I loved about it. Yep. And how controversial it was and how it made a lot of people, even, non-believers, believers, Christians, whatever you want to say, have to, like, oh, I can't believe you did that, blah, 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 whatever. People can see that movie and take it in a million different directions. So I love the way that movie ended. The ending made it. If it didn't end that way with, spoiler alert, Rock Bob, I don't know that I would have thought it was the best movie. Abigail, I thought was really fun. I kind of went into that movie knowing it was going to be a fun horror movie. Me, my wife, my son went to it, and we just had a blast laughing and pulling for him and all that. That was fun, but like more of the horror to me, I would have to put Maxine and Longlegs in there. Longlegs is one I want to see again because I could go see that 2 or 3 times, I think, and every time I see it, I may get a little more out of it.
Yeah.
It took me and my wife me and my wife sit in our living room for 30 minutes after we drove all the way home talking about it. And we still didn't know if we liked it or not. We were like, God, it's so, and then we started talking back on the movie about all the stuff that happened in it. And we're like, well, God, that's creepy. That makes it even more scary that this happened and that happened. And, that girl's in the basement and he's walking around throughout her house the whole time. And it's one of those I want to see again. I love the way it's filmed, though. And I thought Nicolas Cage was awesome, but I also think she's going to be actually at the Mad Monster Con. She played in Urban Legend. God, what is her name? She plays the mother of the.
Oh yeah, I don't know her name. I know who you're talking about though. Yeah,
Alicia Witt? She's going to be down at the Concord at the Mad Monster as well. But I thought she was an awesome actress in the movie as well. But sorry, we diverted off our list right there.
No, please. It's good stuff. Yeah, I kind of like movies like Longlegs sometimes where you don't walk out of the movie knowing 100% what you think about it, and that's your opinion forever. Like some movies you just know. You walk out and you're like, this is how I feel, this is how much fun I had, whatever. And Longlegs, you're like, I don't know. And there's something about it too where, and sometimes it's a blessing and a curse where there's so much about it that's not really spelled out for you, where it might take 2 or 3 watches to kind of put the pieces together, or you might end up finding out it's one of those movies that intentionally leaves pieces out of the box and you're just frustrated with this incomplete picture. But sometimes I like that. I like that little challenge.
Are you looking forward to Alien Romulus or no?
Oh yeah, that should have been on my list.
Okay,
sorry.
I was gonna say, because I'm a big Alien fan, and I'm like, whoa, this kind of looks back to form to me. Alien Covenant, was okay, but this looks back to form. I mean,
all you had to tell me was Fede Alvarez's Alien, and I'm like, I'm there. Ticket bought. Don't need to see anything. Don't need to hear anything. And I've only watched the first teaser. I very much have tried to stick to a practice of not watching too much when it comes to horror advertisement. So I don't know too much about it, and I don't care. That teaser to me was one of the best teasers we've had in a very long time, where this is the vibe, this is the tone. Aliens back, bitch. See you at the theater. Yep. And that's all I need. And so yeah, I'm very much anticipating that one. That one would overtake Nosferatu for me, but all 3 of those are going to be the top 3.
Awesome. So, here, what are some horror movies that you defend that other people like hate or can't stand, that always get a lot of hate online or whatever, critics, what that you defend?
Other than Sleepaway Camp?
Yeah, exactly. The big one for me is probably Child's Play 3. I have a very personal relationship with that movie, and even trying to remove that, I genuinely feel like it's a great Child's Play sequel. I think it does damn near everything that we love Child's Play 2 for. Child's Play 2 just came first. And I always get very puzzled and frustrated at the common complaint that people often hail at it is they're like, it's the same thing as the first two. And I'm like, how many fucking Jason movies did you watch without bitching about it? How many Halloween movies did you? It's all the same shit. That's why we go. And so
that's Mike. That's
yeah,
Mike. I don't think I think we reviewed that and he didn't give a very favorable review,
yeah.
Cody.
And for specific reasons, I'm more than willing to hear about it. But just that overall general thing of like, it's Chucky versus Andy again. Like, it's boring now. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, because all these other franchises, it's not an issue. But for some reason, Child's Play in the third film.
Is that the one that's at the military camp?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So I defend that one a lot because it was my first horror film, and it was what got me into Chucky, and then quickly after that, Freddy, and then the rest is history. It's quite literally the reason why I'm who I am today. So a couple of issues aside that I can totally acknowledge with the movie. I think it's great, and so I passionately defend that one. The first two Phantasm movies are very much love or hate. Just that series in general, really, but the first two are the only ones that I'll bother defending. It's very much love or hate, so I get sometimes I don't know what to expect. Sometimes I'll recommend it to people, and I'm like, they're either going to tell me they love it or we're about to fight. So you have those, and then another one that I just feel like there's not really much defenses for it, but it's a movie that is so much nostalgia for me, is the 1990 It miniseries. To where I don't see too many people nowadays watching that for the first time and liking it. And I totally get why. But
right.
I remember when It Chapter 1 came out and I was like, this is great, but Tim Curry was scarier. And people watch it and they're like, how the fuck? Like, what is this? and I can understand that watched it for the first time, but I'm like, hey man, in the 90s, like that was scary as shit.
Yeah, it was.
That's one that I have to defend with nostalgia sometime where I'm like, I know it kind of sucks, especially in the second half, but hear me out.
I'm just glad you didn't say you're a defender of Halloween Ends. So I'm just glad about that.
No,
here we go.
I'm in the middle of that movie.
The neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that I like it to a degree, but I also think it's just puzzling why that's the third chapter in a trilogy. So I don't really get into passionate arguments one way or the other. People love it, people hate it. I'm just in the middle. Like I get it. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, you do. That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, with that one, I just don't understand why they killed Corey because, I mean...
that pissed me off. I was invested in Corey.
Right, if they would have let him be the next Michael Myers, it would have fixed a lot of things for that movie. Also, why'd they let him get beat up by the band nerds? I don't know.
I would tell you what, so I don't know. I'm sure you guys are familiar because most people that watch my channel are. So I had a big issue with the Halloween fan base for a while after Halloween 2018 came out. And so I watched Halloween Kills. I was like, okay, it's not great, but whatever. But when I watched Halloween Ends, I saw it a night before it premiered wide or whatever. And I got to the scene where Corey just body slams Michael Myers in the sewer. And I was just laughing. I was like, they're going to be so fucking mad. This is going to be awesome. And so even though it's ridiculous, I agree that was stupid for them to do. I was just laughing. I was just like, oh, people are about to lose their fucking minds and I'm going to enjoy it.
I paid money to go see that too. I mean, shit.
Mm-hmm.
Mike flew to the theater the opening day. So, but no, I mean, yeah. I mean, if you're going to have him get beat up by high school kids, but then be able to beat Michael Myers up, makes sense of it,
Yeah.
I don't know. But, so we'll kind of we'll go down to this question because we're talking about that. What do you prefer? The David Gordon Green Halloween trilogy or the Rob Zombie Halloween movies? What ones do you prefer?
Or neither, or none of the above.
Yeah, or none.
They both have their problems for sure. I don't think either one of them is completely successful. If I'm not mistaken, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which I know I'm in the vast minority with, I think I have that rated higher than any of the David Gordon Green films. But overall, as a trilogy, I think I would prefer watching those because Rob Zombie's first movie, I think the first act is borderline unwatchable. I think it's garbage. Everything horrible with him as a kid, the dialogue is... I would struggle to think of a worse example than the first act of that movie as far as writing. The second act to me is just a giant missed opportunity because once you get past that shit bomb of the first act, you're like, okay, well, I get to spend some time with Loomis and Michael and seeing their relationship develop. And that act is not about that at all. It's like on fast forward. And then you get the third act, and it's like a Rob Zombified quick remake of the original, which is enjoyable. It's fun.
Yeah.
You know, it took me a while to warm up to it, but overall, that movie is not great. I think there's things I like about it, but overall, I never really watch it. The second film still has some issues. It still has some of that Rob Zombie writing. Like, I think the coroner in the beginning, I think he says fuck like 72 times or something like that. It's ridiculous, where he just keeps saying it, and it's like, why are we doing this? There's moments like that in the movie. But for me, and I know people passionately hate when I say this, for me, the second film felt like the movie Rob always wanted to make, where it's like, this is Rob Zombie's Michael Myers movie. Love it or hate it, and most people hate it. This is something unique. It's something different, which you struggle to find in the Halloween franchise. Now, there's great ones, don't get me wrong, that are quintessential, you know, tried and true Halloween films. But you watch through a lot of those movies, it's like eating the same meal for a week. And so you get to this one, and it's so different. You know, with Michael Myers being like this lost soul, and him putting the mask on when he kills, which I liked, kind of gave the mask a purpose. I think that a lot of people don't really give credit to the movie, that it's the only movie where we actually get to see Laurie Strode react to the revelation that she's a Myers. We never get to see that with Jamie Lee Curtis. You just find out off scene with Loomis, and then you never tell her, and then in H2O she just knows. So this one, the revelation where she's reading the book, which I also thought was a very well written way for her to find out, Loomis being a greedy prick and putting it in there for you know, nowadays what would be clicks, and her finding out that way. To me, it's the goriest. Kills gives it a run for its money, but it's the goriest of any of the Halloween movies. Yeah. So I think, you know, the white horse stuff, go fuck itself. That's terrible. A couple of the things in there, it's too Rob Zombie for me, even in this one. But to me, that's much better of the two. But if I'm gonna average them together, I would probably rather watch the 2018 Kills Ends trifecta.
Yeah, I remember watching that first Rob Zombie Halloween. I think me and my ex-wife rented it, and we were there with some friends watching it, and I'm like, what are we there's a rape scene here, there's like what are we this isn't a Halloween freaking movie.
The director's cuts of both of those movies are so much worse, which is weird. Like, the director's cut of the original is what has the sexual assault scene. He just breaks out in the theatrical cut, which is fine. It's the most gratuitous and pointless assault scene, if any of them ever really have a point. That's the one that has no point. It's just there for shock value, and it's stupid. Yeah. And in the second movie, the director's cut is where you have Michael actually speak and say, "Die," and he stabs Loomis, and it's like, why is that here? It's so, if you're gonna watch either of them, people, watch the theatrical cuts.
Okay. So I watched the director's cut then. I must have been with the rape scene in the first. I'm like, wait, why is this in a Halloween movie? And then like you said, just the dialogue in the beginning with the family, it's like
horrendous.
It got old quick, and it just was. Yeah, I think we might have turned it off. I don't know. We were like, this ain't really something we want to watch right now.
Yeah, me and my dad, I've since grown to appreciate things about it, but me and my dad had seen only The Devil's Rejects by that point, and it didn't work for either of us at the time. It was like, what is this? This shit's weird. And so we walked into Halloween just off the trailer, and it was like, oh, he's doing something more straightforward. Cool. And I remember we went opening night, and that whole first 20 minutes, like, my dad was over here. I kind of dragged him to the theater, and I was just like this the whole time. Just like, sorry.
Yeah. It's not good. It's not great. Okay, so this is one that me and Mike have conversations about a lot. Thoughts on Blumhouse, and if they're bad now or have always been bad, and also kind of like, I'm kind of throwing this in there. Don't they make like the worst trailers? Like, they just give away so much stuff in their trailers, in my opinion. Your thoughts about that as well.
Blumhouse is so complicated because you can't argue with their success. So they're clearly doing something right. Like, you can't tell that guy, you can't say they're dumb. You can't say they don't know what they're doing. The thing with Blumhouse, for the longest time, it felt like every year they would give you one of the best horror movies of the year and one of the worst horror movies of the year, and then a whole bunch of shit in the middle. Yep. And that was kind of par for the course for them for a while. And so you never really, the issue I've always had with them is quality control. Because I don't know, when you put Blumhouse on there, I'm like, dude, I don't know what I'm walking into. I could love this thing or I could fucking hate it. They have no, their name doesn't mean anything as far as quality for me.
Right.
And it really wasn't until the last year and a half or so where it's just like miss after miss after miss after miss after miss. And so now they're at a point where it's like, you guys better do something, man. Like they completely, in my opinion, completely shit the bed on Exorcist. And I mean, to the point where they've had to panic and do a hard pivot to the only guy that would give the horror fans faith, Mike Flanagan. And so then you had that. You had, I didn't think the last Insidious movie was very good. And then you had like 3 or 2 Blumhouse movies at the beginning of this year that was just like, this is easily going to go in my bottom 5 of the year. Night Swim and Imaginary. And yeah. And so now they're at a point where like I associate Blumhouse with trash. And it sucks because I know they have talented people over there. I know they're smart, but for whatever reason, they've just hit this little streak now where it's just like shit bomb after shit bomb. And, you know, I'm terrified of them getting the rights to like Nightmare on Elm Street because I know he wants it. He wants it so fucking bad. And, you know, I think he's already offered something to Robert Englund and talk with him. So he wants to have the horror franchises like the Infinity Stones. He wants to be able to have all of them and just everything's under the Blumhouse umbrella. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like there's just something about they're all about quantity and not quality. They just want to pump out. Their movies have started to feel like they get a script that nobody else wants to make. They figure out the minimum amount of money that they could fund it for. They put it into production and goes out in theaters. And even if it gets horrendously reviewed, they make a profit. So they're cool. That's how Imaginary felt to me, where I'm like, yeah, this feels like a movie that needed at least a couple more $1 million to even halfway realize what you're trying to do. But you gave like the great value budget version out because you knew people were going to go see it in February and you'd make twice the amount of money you put into it. And so whatever, we're good. Let's go fund 8 more. Right. And that's what put them on the map. Was doing that with Paranormal Activity and things. It was teaching Hollywood that you don't have to dump hundreds of millions of dollars into something. You just make it for $1 million, make it for $500,000, and then you walk away with 20 million profit. And that's awesome. It's genius. But now it's starting to impede their movies, in my opinion.
Don't they have? I thought I saw a trailer. Didn't they make or involved with the Speak No Evil?
Yeah.
So. I mean, they
can't go wrong on that. Surely to God, they can't screw that one up because the other one was really good. Surely they can't mess that up.
That one's puzzling to me because, I mean, we just got that original movie not even 2 years ago. And so
I like the original. The original was really good, I thought.
It's tough because I think it's very well made, but I get so angry when I watched it just because as a parent, I'm like, what the fuck? Get out of there. And so by the end of the movie, I was just pissed. But the fact that they quickly threw that into the American remake machine, I was like, that's weird. Like it's not even a year old. And yes, it's technically a foreign film, but they all speak English. So like, it's not like a movie with subtitles. And so I had a lot of skepticism about that one. The trailer, you know, going back to what you're talking about, the trailer, the first trailer for that one, you watch it and it's like, this is literally the whole movie packaged in 2 minutes. If you've seen the original, you're like, that's every reveal. That's every secret you have in the movie in the trailer. And early reviews are coming out for it, which I always take with a boulder of salt. Right. But the early reviews are saying like this movie's shockingly good. Like it's funny. It's so subversive for the original. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm a little more, got a little more piqued interest in it. But Jason Blum came out probably 3-4 years ago. Somebody asked him about that. Like, why do your trailers give away the entire movie? And I'm paraphrasing, but he more or less said because of today's movie crowd, the younger generation, he has to do that because people want that. They want to know everything about the movie before they walk into it. And so their numbers, whatever they're looking at, says when you give the whole movie in 2 minutes, your movie does better. I fucking despise that. And especially since they do it with every one of their movies, they have 2-3 trailers come out. And even the first one feels like it gives away too much. But for whatever reason, that's why he does it. And I'm really hoping that we're starting to get into this season with things like Long Legs, where they actively don't show you anything. Like the marketing is just like, here's a creepy image from the movie with no context. See you in, July.
Yeah.
And I really want us to start to get into an era where we can build a little bit more intrigue and have a little more trust in our audience instead of just packaging the entire movie in 2 minutes. And, you know, then you have to leave the theater every time they play the trailer if you're trying to avoid it, or you have people that are, you know, if you don't want to watch it and you do what I do and you have to live in social media to a certain extent, you got people out there discussing things and then you get it blown for you that way. So I hope that we're going to start to see something different there, but Blumhouse is by far the worst offenders at that.
Yeah, they are. So just going off this trailer thing, I follow you on Twitter, obviously, and have for a little while now. And I saw you were defending Abigail's trailer to people a lot. Like, this is a conversation you were having on Twitter quite a bit, if I remember. I would see
I did a whole video on it because I was so annoyed.
Yes. But also you definitely had a lot of conversation on Twitter defending it. And I think I was actually in the other camp. I didn't try to get in a conversation with anybody about it, but I thought, like, well, wouldn't that be cool if they wouldn't have gave that away? But I also understand what you're saying. Like, you still, like, you don't think it hurt the movie, like, at all, really.
To me, like, I understand a little bit about that. Like, wouldn't it be cool if we all walked into this movie and didn't know it was a vampire film, and then holy shit, I have no idea how you advertise that movie without showing that. That's problem number one. And I think that if you have a twist in your first half of your film, it's probably going to be in the marketing, and you need to make sure your film functions even if people know that. Right. And I think Abigail very much does that. Right. But for me, I've seen the movie 3 times at this point. When I watched the first 45 minutes or so of that movie, however long it is, up until the point where Abigail shows the fangs and now we know we're in a vampire movie, the information of knowing that the vampire reveal is coming just frames the first 45 minutes to me in a comedic way, where you're watching everybody jump to conclusions and point fingers at each other and follow all these false leads. And you're just laughing and enjoying it, knowing, like, no, it's the little girl. She's a vampire. You have no idea the shit that you're in. And so I think that it functions really well, even knowing that. I mean, you got multiple characters in there, like the big dumb one that jumps to these conclusions, and they're like, oh, it's this rumored, you know, contract killer that works for the father who's a mobster. It must be him. And then one person shows up without a fucking head, and then the next person gets killed in the hallway. And they're like, what's going on? And they're all, you're Lazar, and so I think it functions really fun in that form. And I don't know, like, I mean, of course it would be a mysterious element if you didn't know, but I think that part of it is fun. I think that's people that were getting passionately against it were acting like the movie is a drag until that happens. And that's where I just didn't understand it. Like, just fucking get to the point. And I'm like, how are you not enjoying the build up to that? Like, that's
I enjoyed that. I thought it was fun.
Exactly. And so that's where I was mostly puzzled, where it's like, okay, if you would have rather it been a mystery, cool, totally fair. But acting like the first 40 minutes of the movie doesn't work in any fashion, if you know that, I was like, I could not disagree more. I think it's a blast. Right.
Well, like the first time
Josh and I have been kind of we kind of talked about this a while back. What, about 2 months ago, Josh?
I don't know how long ago.
But we started diving into looking back at original trailers from classics like 50, 40 years ago. A lot of those original trailers showed every damn thing.
Yeah.
Like, we went back and looked at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I know is a low budget film from back in the day. It showed every kill in the trailer.
Yeah.
I mean, it showed Leatherface right off the bat. And that's one of my favorite movies of all time. Josh, you know, a couple more others we watched. It was like, you know, this is nothing new. It's been done for the last 40 and 50 years. So it's nothing new.
Yeah, definite. So here's one question that I'm real curious. We're talking about horror. Well, I mean, I want to talk about horror remakes. Some people like them, some people don't. What are some of your best and worst horror remakes?
I tend to be more favorable on remakes than most. I champion them most of the time. I don't subscribe at all to this ruined the original. Like, even if it's the worst movie I've ever seen, it's not like, you know, Universal's coming into my house with a fucking flamethrower and they're like, the original's gone forever. And so I really like seeing new takes on movies. Sometimes it feels unnecessary, but if you get a good movie out of it, it's always cool. So some of my favorites. I love the Texas Chainsaw remake. That was
Me
actually
too.
my first experience with a Texas Chainsaw movie, and the experience that people describe to you that they had with the first film in the 70s. That's the experience that I had in 2003, where I was just like legitimately the scariest movie theater experience I've ever had. And there's not many. I don't get scared very easy. So the ones that do, they're in here forever. Me and my dad, like a Sunday, 3-4 weeks out of the movie came out, with like 2 other people in the theater in the pitch black. And man, that version of Leatherface with Arlie Ermy, who I think is the scariest character in the whole franchise, that movie chilled me, where I didn't even think we were going to buy it. I was like, we don't need to experience that again ever. And then we eventually did, and I've seen it many times since. But I love that one. I really enjoy the Fright Night remake. I feel like that doesn't get any love, and I really dig that one. It's a very fun movie that changes up just enough that it kind of stands on its own way. And speaking of movies that people hate that I defend passionately, the Friday the 13th remake. I love that one. That one's my favorite of all of them. Now, granted, I didn't grow up with the Friday the 13th movie, so I don't have any nostalgia. Otherwise, I'm sure my answer would be different. But I think that movie is kind of like a greatest hits of
I love
the 13th stuff. So I really like that one, and the Amityville Horror one. I'll say that one too. I've never really been big on the original. Got to be honest. But I think that's an effectively creepy movie. I think Ryan Reynolds is awesome in that. Of course, he's the comedy guy, but he's great in that movie.
Yes,
and
I agree.
Some really good scares. And then the other one that I'll throw in, which I don't know, people argue back and forth whether this is a remake or a sequel, but the Fede Alvarez Evil Dead.
I love that one.
And I didn't at first.
Oh,
there's very, very rare that I change my opinion up so drastically on a movie. I don't know if I was in a bad mood or what, or maybe it was the advertisement that was, this is the most shocking, scary movie you'll ever see. I think that was literally on the poster. It was like big font. And so I walk in expecting to be scared, wasn't, and I was just like, fuck this movie. So I didn't really like it at all when I saw it in theaters.
Really?
2-3 years later, I was like, let me throw this thing on. I don't know. I'm bored. And I'm watching it and I'm just like, what movie did I watch the last time? This is the shit. And so I adore that movie. I think that's the most really kick-ass, it's the most metal horror movie of all time. Like the rain and blood at the end and everything. It's so fucking awesome.
It is. I love that one. I think that had a really good trailer, if I remember right. Like it hyped me and my friend up. We were like, "Oh, can't wait to see this in the theater." And we loved it when I first saw it. I thought it was great. We were just really wanting more Evil Dead because we liked the original 3. So we're like, wait, an Evil Dead movie in 2013 or whenever 2013 or whatever that was, or we're like, wait a minute. So we were excited, no doubt.
Very much. So now some bad ones. Prom Night comes to mind as being pretty shitty. Any horror film or slasher film, I should say more specifically, that tries to be PG-13 hard to a point where it's almost PG. I don't see the value in that. So the first Prom Night, for being such a low budget movie, is actually pretty creepy. I remember watching that movie. It was like 2 a.m. and I was just going through the channels. I'm the only person awake. It's pitch black in my house. I was probably like 11 and come across this movie with these kids chasing this little girl. Kill, and she falls off the balcony or whatever. And I was like glued to that movie. So I have some fondness for the original. The remake is pretty terrible. The Fog, garbage. I've watched it once. I don't remember anything about it other than a bunch of CGI and it feeling like a CW movie. And then one that I always feel like I got to throw out there because I just hate everything this movie stands for, and that is Black Christmas, the Blumhouse one, 2019, I think. Yeah.
What about the other one's horrible in my opinion too?
Black Xmas.
No, Black Xmas.
Oh,
the one that we reviewed with the guy.
No,
I'm talking about. Well, we're talking about remakes, Mike, not original movies.
Right.
This is the funny thing. Black Xmas, I thought was horrible until I saw Black Christmas 2019, and then I was like, you know what? That ain't so bad.
Well,
the thing that I appreciate about Black Xmas, I'm not a big fan of it, but what I appreciate about it is that it just takes everything about the original and goes its complete own direction with it.
Yeah.
Black Christmas 2019 is everything that people think all remakes are. which is let's just borrow the name because it has some goodwill attached to it and there's some recognizable, value there that'll milk some money. Let's pay zero respect to the original and really have nothing to do with the original just to repackage some weird fucking feminist message about it. And like, there's a lot of movies out there that, get a lot of bad rep about like preaching to people or being socially active. And most movies that get that accusation doesn't really merit it. Every movie, even back in the 70s and 80s, horror films always had something to say under the under the surface. But this movie was just overtly message first, second, and third, story fourth. And I hated that movie with every bone in my body. I just despised everything that it stood for. So that, to me, that might be my answer for number one, because it's a shit movie, but it also represents just stealing goodwill from a much better movie that, you couldn't wipe. This movie couldn't wipe the original's ass. It's bad. It's bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen that one, and I guess I shouldn't. So it's well, I guess maybe
terrible.
If I want my opinion of the Black Xmas to improve, maybe I should watch it.
The movie is basically, you have college girls, and the whole movie is just a bunch of dialogue about how men suck.
Oh.
And then that ties into who's eventually revealed to be the villain. Spoiler alert, men. And like the motivation, because men are awesome and we have to take down the women. And it's like, it's the most horribly packaged message I've ever seen, where it's like you can have a message in there and weave it into the story in a way that's clever and makes sense. This is just like them shouting at a megaphone. Like from the opening text of the movie that introduces it, it tells you exactly what's on their minds. Just them shouting through a megaphone at you the whole time going, women first, men suck. Women first, men suck for 90 minutes. And it's like, this doesn't help anybody. It's horrible.
Okay. Well, dang. Yeah. I guess I have to check it out just to see how bad it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got one more question here, don't we, Mike? And then.
Well, I may have missed it, or I'm out of order. You can go ahead and ask it, Josh.
This is Mike. What questions do we have?
It's past my bedtime.
So I was just gonna ask you how you got involved with MegaCon, because you seem pretty involved with it. Like you said, you've done it for a couple years now. So how'd you get involved with that?
I'm really not, surprisingly. Like it's a really weird thing. So basically what happened was my buddy Sean started doing these little panels where he'd kind of give a bit of a presentation on how to start and how to build a YouTube channel. And he got in really good with the guy Chuck that was running the stage at the time. And so Chuck kind of pushed for us to get a stage and a panel at MegaCon the first year. And then we had so many people show up that Chuck's wheels started turning, and he's like, we could really turn this into something. Like we could do like a con within the con, like get like a YouTuber's corner of MegaCon. And so the following year we came back and we had like John Flickinger from the Flick Pick and Austin Burke and 3C and a bunch of pretty big notable YouTubers in our space. And that was kind of our proof of concept for that. Like, let's draw a bunch of people to this corner of the convention that's all about YouTube. And the people that worked at Fan Expo just didn't seem to get it. Like we had wall-to-wall people. I mean, people standing room only. And, we were out there doing our panels and then off to the side at our little autograph tables for like 2 hours after each panel. And for some reason, aside from, I think the guy that worked directly over Chuck, the higher ups just didn't understand what we were trying to do, I guess. And so the third year we went back and didn't really try to do exactly the same thing, but we were, just kind of there having fun. And I think that con, because of that and a bunch of other frustrations, Chuck turned in his notice at the end of MegaCon this past February. So he's working with GalaxyCon now. No word on whether or not he's going to be able to do anything GalaxyCon wise to bring us in, but Chuck was our one point of contact that was pushing for us and getting us to continuously be involved with it. And so with him there, we might be able to reach out and do something, but it's not going to be anything like what it was, I don't think. I really think even after 2 years of us drawing hundreds of people, the people up top just didn't pop up on their radar, I guess. And for a con as big as MegaCon, I'm sure there's probably layers upon layers of management. So that might be it as far as MegaCon goes for us.
Okay.
I really don't know, but
Okay.
I guess you'll find out when we find out.
Right. Has any like smaller cons reached out to you? Like I said, like Mad. I know you said you're starting to go to some, but like a Mad Monster or something like that seems like maybe that would be a good fit or something like that.
I ran into somebody at Mad Monster when I was there who works for Mad Monster, and he was like flabbergasted that I was there. He's like, dude, I was gonna reach out to you about coming here, but we ran out of time. Like, I'm so glad to see you here. And so I have something kind of in the works with that.
Awesome.
They actually invited me to this one in Concord, but I had already agreed to go to the one in Arizona. So unfortunately, them being the same weekend, that kind of got screwed up. So I don't know. In the future, I'd like to think that I'll probably get invited again. You know, this guy seemed to be pretty passionate about me being involved somehow, but I don't want to assume too much. So I wouldn't be surprised.
Right. Cause I see Dead Meat. I know they're like a huge imprint in YouTube, but I see that they're doing cons and stuff now. We're not friends with the guy, but we know this guy named Sean Clark, and he handles a lot of these celebrities, and he's an agent for a lot of these cons. He gets a celebrity. He's agent for the celebrities, right, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he does that. And you know, he talked to us about the cons and all that. And I think he's the agent for James A. Janice.
Yeah, he's our agent.
Right. So, I mean, maybe it'll become more and more of a thing, you know, by having, you know, YouTubers in that genre be there, which I think is a good thing. It really is.
Well, the thing about those is the panels, and like not only you get to hear from the actors and actresses, but like even like somebody like you, Cody, you know, that comes out and does movie reviews and how you got started and all that. That's the thing about the Creators Corner or YouTube Corner. And there's a lot of us out here like our channels. This small channel just started a couple of years ago. You're working your way up, but there's a lot of people just passionate about conventions and horror, the horror genre overall. And if you were set up there and doing a panel, I would go in there and I would listen. I mean, I would think there would be a big draw for that, in my personal opinion. But
I think there would be too.
I've also seen some actors and actresses in there where nobody was already in there. So yeah, I don't know.
I think there would be too. I think it's just a disconnect between people that watch the YouTube and people that don't. Right. So everybody that watches YouTube and knows our channels and what we bring and everything like that is very much like this guy at Mad Monster. He's like, dude, like we gotta do something. Like I'm trying to tell them this is where we need to go. And then if you have a bunch of people above him that don't watch YouTube, they're like, what the fuck? What guy that talks about what all these other people do? Why the fuck do I want him here? And so it's an understandable disconnect. But yeah, I think just like what we were trying to do with Mad Monster or with MegaCon, I think it would just take a couple of proof of concepts, which maybe some of that is something I need to kind of pound the pavement for, which I haven't done because I haven't even attended too many cons, but I start reaching out and I want to go that direction. You know, the future might have more of that, but
that's awesome.
Certainly with Mad Monster, I think there might be something there in the future, which would be cool.
Nice.
And then this one at Gathering of the Ghouls is exactly that, where I'm going to be there as talent and being able to hang out with everybody, and I'm going to be running at least one panel that I know of. So that'll be kind of a test run too.
Yeah, and that's good because then it'll open the door more for other channels and different things. So I think that's good. It's a good thing for sure.
Well, the one in Charleston was moved from Orlando up to Charleston, right? And then the one in Concord, Mad Monster, I mean, it's only a 4-hour drive from Concord to Spooky Empire, or what was it called? Something Empire in Charleston?
Spooky Empire.
Yeah, it got moved. It's the first time it got moved from Orlando up to Charleston, right?
I don't know. I assume that they just did them both because they have ones in October, and I think that one's always in Orlando because it's a bigger one. So maybe they're just doing like a summer one at a smaller convention, or maybe they're moving. I really don't know, but they're kind of equal distance for me, so it's whatever.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Want to wrap it up, Mike?
Yeah. Hey, appreciate you, Cody. Thanks for coming in here with us. Thanks for spending your time with us, answering a lot of questions, and we'd like to open up the floor to you to kind of let everybody here know what's going on with your channel. And actually, you got a couple channels, and I did remember one of your interviews, possibly a third channel one of these years, cooking channels, which I've got a cooking channel too. But tell us about what's going on with your channels and how people can find out about you.
Yeah, no problems. I appreciate the invite, by the way. So yeah, on the main channel, I assume by the time this is uploaded, it'll still be in the near future, but you got Trap coming out this Friday.
Yep.
And then so I'll follow that up with my updated M. Night Shyamalan ranking. And then Cuckoo, I'm going to try to get a review out for that. I was able to see it a couple months ago at the Overlook Film Festival in New Orleans, but that's being released here in a week or two. So I'm going to try to get a review out for that. Then you got Borderlands. And I got a bunch of things to do in between. August is a much slower movie month than June and July, where before Halloween season kicks into it, and that's like Super Bowl season for me.
Yeah.
So we'll have some stuff like that coming down the pipe, and then the gaming channel, which is called Cody Leach Game Chamber, I've been neglecting horribly this year because there have been no new games, which it's just that figures. You start a video game channel in the 2 years where there's just seems like there's nothing out new to play. So I have not had the time to really figure out what to do over there without new things to talk about, which is a failure on my part. And then the third channel possibility, yeah, I'm big into cooking, and I love watching cooking YouTube channels. That's pretty much all that I watch on YouTube. For as much time as I spend talking about movies, that's the last thing I want to watch when I'm on YouTube. So some people are surprised by that, but I would love to kind of do my own take on that. It's just a matter of when do I want to launch it? A little bit of gun shyness because of how the gaming channel has gone, where I fired it off and I felt like there was plenty of things to do, and then I've kind of struggled to keep up with it. Also, just being a one-man show, it's just like, oh, do I want another channel? So it's something that'll probably happen. It's just a matter of when I'm most comfortable to launch it. But for the most part, that's what I got coming up. And then, of course, Gathering of the Ghouls. If anybody's near Phoenix, Arizona, that's the 23rd or the 24th of August, that weekend, whatever that Saturday, Sunday is, I'll be there.
Okay.
All right. Hey, we appreciate it. Hey, please like, comment, subscribe. Definitely hit up Cody Leach. You probably already here watching it because of him. Hit us up as well. And hey, we'll see you guys later, Cody. We really appreciate it again.
We do appreciate it, Cody.
No problem. Thank you.
Yep.
All
right. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.